Mama she cry. Papa him cry. What the chase from the mind? Babylon a murderer. Them this to get for you them wrong now. Babylon a murderer. Me have to box up with me lion paw. Well Babylon a murderer. Them this to get for you them wrong now. Babylon a murderer. Me have to box up with me lion paw.
Shalom, salam. In the last segment, we went over a number of different subjects. One being that of certain sources of information out there today as so-called New Age religion or philosophy based off a lot of actual facts and truth of so-called conspiracies, but are actually based off the world system. Now, granted, some of these books are not meant to be taken literally 100%. You know, there's certain sources of information are, but there's a lot of mixed fragments of, you know, so-called legit, you know, information that needs to be taken with a grain of salt. Now, ironically, there are legit sources of information in a lot of these books based off truth and actual reality, but we have to use our third eye when it comes to actually decoding reality, because there are mixed forms of actual facts and truth mixed in with a lot of so-called suspended animation and so-called reality, kind of like modern religion today, bringing more confusion to people of different cultures, different religions, or so-called a so-called non-religion of New Age philosophy. Remember, a lot of this legit sources of information go in parallel with the fallen angels or the Nephilim that we talked about in the previous segment. From that ancient serpent seed, integrating with the sons of man, or sons and daughters of man, as the so-called reptilian hybrids in modern science and New Age philosophy, you know, kind of seen as extraterrestrials in a sense, but are more accurately and realistically interdimensional beings, not so much Martians or aliens from another planet. Not that those don't possibly exist, but which I'm sure they do as well, but we're talking about interdimensional beings right here on Earth, you know, from the spiritual realm and the physical, that have integrated in certain forms of human DNA. We talked about that too in some detail in the previous segment, but when it comes to the powers that be, or the corrupt world system from the Illuminati, going back to the first Freemasons, and even going further back to ancient Babylonia, from the original serpent seed and the offspring of the serpent seed from the giants, the Kenites, the reptilian hybrids, that integrated with certain Aryan races and other races and colored people, I'm sure. But when we speak of the world system or the powers that be, it's not that every human being, you know, behind the government forces or, you know, Babylon is necessarily integrated with reptilian hybrid blood. These are human beings, or just corrupt, wicked human beings that have sold their soul to the devil, in a sense, you know, sold their soul to the world system. And its ultimate blasphemy and mockery of the true Almighty God Elohim. This is under Satan's control from the spiritual realm into the physical. And of course, this goes back to the fall of mankind. And this serpent seed that originally integrated with certain forms of human DNA are the interdimensional beings, or even demonic spirits, if you will. Some refer to jinn spirits or duppy spirits, but they are the actual demonic forces of Satan's demonic spirit upon earth. Some refer to these evil forces as the 10% of devilish men upon earth that control the world system. And this goes back to the original book of Genesis, referring to the original Tower of Babel. Now we know that Babel means confusion, so this was the confusion of not just the devilish species within wicked man, but even foolish human beings that submitted to this way of philosophy and life, trying to emulate Almighty God by fighting against him. Now going back to the ancient Kabbalistic knowledge of truth, there are two ways to emulate Almighty God, Elohim, that is to obey in true faith and submission, and also the forbidden path to emulate God by fighting against him. The only thing about that forbidden path is that one is destined to fall. Using their theology of breaking a few eggs in order to create their own so-called omelet of propaganda and a so-called unjust war, giving fuel to other unjust forms of actual terrorism in other nationalities, in other countries, and even right here on American soil, making innocent civilians of all colored people victimized by this form of propaganda and actual terrorism. There's a lot of evil things that have been taking place right here on American soil in modern Mystery Babylon. These forms of propaganda and a lot of evil things that have taken place in the past 10, 20, say 30 to 50, maybe 200 or you could say 400 years in the beginning of American or so-called American history. We can go back to the past 2,000 to even 5,000 years BC. Everything from propaganda as mind control to modern corporate Christianity, creating that slave grip and that ultimate blasphemy, using propaganda for religions to fight against religion, nation fighting against nation, etc., etc. People like His Majesty Dr. Martin Luther King that are true revolutionaries in America that stood up for a lot of oppressed black people during the civil rights movement. People like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X assassinated by these devilish forces using the same forms of propaganda and mind control. Then you have the cruelest hoax upon earth, based off the ancient original promised land of the original Hebrew Israelites. Now today, an actual state called Israel. Of course, this was a prophecy from the ancient prophets in the original Torah, the prophets, the Nevi'im, and even prophecies of the New Testament in the Bible. But just because it was a prophecy that came in the past doesn't mean that it's based on the foundation of true righteousness according to the Father's will. In this gradual process, using propaganda, integrating actual Eurocentric Jews connected with the original people of Israel and the so-called Jews in political power and authority as propaganda to assassinate and murder thousands of innocent Palestinian victims of Arab, Muslim nationality.